All right, I think perhaps I'll get started and just welcome everybody to the next event in the series of programs that we have for the exhibition. What is the name of the exhibition? Gives on and with Decolonial Moves of the Transcultural, guest curated by Noor Bhangu for the Ore Gallery. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Ore Gallery is located in Vancouver, which is on the traditional, ancestral and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And by way of introduction, I would just like to read Noor's bio before I hand it over to her. Let's see here. Noor Bhangu is a curator and scholar whose practice employs cross-cultural encounters to interrogate issues of diaspora and indigeneity in post- and settler colonial contexts. Her curatorial practice includes the projects Overlapping Violent Histories, a curatorial investigation into difficult knowledge, 2018, Women of Color at SOA Gallery, 2018, Not the Camera, but the Filing Cabinet, Performative Body Archives in Contemporary Art, 2018, and Digitalia, 2019. And in 2018, Noor began her PhD in Communication and Culture at Ryerson and York University in Toronto. And we're really excited to have the exhibition here. It's been developing over the last few weeks with the new works kind of arriving each Thursday after the artist-led reading group. And today we get to hear a little bit more from Noor about the development of this project and some of the inspirations and methodologies that she's using. So take it away, Noor.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, my name is Noor, and before we start, I just wanted to ask if Noor didn't mention it already, because we will be recording the session. So if you're not comfortable with it, just turn off your video. I'm sorry if you said it already, my ears are not functioning. So yeah, we can get started. I have like about a 30-minute lecture that I want to go through, just talking about some ideas from Glissant and like my approach to research and curation at this point in my practice. And following that, it'd be great to also see some images from the exhibition, talk about the artists and the artworks and the discussion. And if you have any questions or if you want to share ideas about how you're approaching relation and identity, I think it would be really lovely to hear from everybody. So, okay, let's start. Give me a second, I just have to make sure everything is set. Okay. Just 1 second. So can everybody see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And is the presentation small now, or is it still okay?
We can see the program that you're working in. So I think maybe you need to share the screen or go to slide view or something. That's it.
I don't want to go in all of that, but maybe we'll just look at it like this. Yeah, I just want to have my notes ready, but yeah, so yeah, before I start this presentation, I want to start with a story, which really marks the beginning of my reading of Édouard Glissant, who's at the heart of this project. So in the fall of 2019, I was doing a residency in Oslo, and on November 12 specifically, I attended this presentation by Dr. Dalida Maria Benfield and Christopher A. Bratton from Cadasar organization, who are discussing the work of Glissant and its impact on their transnational residency program. And at some point during their talk, Dr. Benfield shared a story about the past project during which an artist from Martinique, but I think based in France at the time, shared his difficult relationship with Glissant, who remained largely marginal in the Caribbean, but occupied a really hegemonical position in France. And so to navigate the distance between himself and Glissant, the artist organized a performance in which he carefully placed Poetics of Relation on the ground before slowly stepping on the copy in front of his audience and then stepping off. And this performance had shifted the organizer's own reception of Glissant, because after it, they sort of closed their presentation and opened the floor, because for them, this really marked Glissant's legacy and how we can sort of approach his work now from different locations. And because of this conversation, I really took my own first step on Poetics of Relation. And over the course of this last year and a half, I've performed a number of returns that have drastically changed the way in which I view the world, its histories, and my own responsibility to all of them. Because on that night, when I was introduced to Glissant's proposition that our responsibility to remember is greater than our own history, I really wanted to shift the way I did my work, and also the kind of research I wanted to do and different methodologies I wanted to involve. So this particular exhibition has been a way for me to find rest in this prompt that we have to sort of involve all other histories when we are doing personal historical work. And really this exhibition is a way for me to map out future research. And for that reason, I'm presenting a lot of reflections on different things Glissant has written about, and Lisa Lowe as well, who I'll get into, and also some notes about research that feel appealing to me at this moment. And the aim of this lecture and the whole exhibition is to sort of explore these different ideas, and then for that to culminate in a curatorial text by the end of the exhibition, and then in another exhibition in Norway in 2 years. So it's a slower work, but I'm really excited to share that with you. I think my hearing is coming back. Okay. So I'll delve into the title of the exhibition later on in the lecture, but before that, I want to quickly introduce the project. This is a group exhibition that takes shape through a series of reading sessions led by 4 artists and a research collective, where each person discusses their work through the lens of relation, decolonization, and solidarity. And I requested everyone to select 1 or 2 texts to animate their artistic practices. And so far we have looked at Kenlam through Zinia Naqvi and Mahmoud Darwish through Ayman al-Azraq. And over the course of these 5 reading sessions that'll unfold, and 1 virtual performance, and this curatorial lecture, the material exhibition, and the culminating curatorial text, the central aim of this project is to think about processes of learning and understanding through research, dialogue, and specifically through circulation. And so the group consists of practitioners from Canada and Norway, 2 locations that feel accidental at first, and maybe in this present moment as well, as we're navigating our own relations to each other and like where we're located in the world. But I think they can be aligned for us to rethink practices and protocols that deal with curation, research, and solidarity, especially when it comes from cultural peripheries that a lot of the featured artists sort of occupy. So I'll discuss this connection more in my lecture, and then maybe we can touch it again during the discussion as well. But today, the main points that I want to sort of focus on are identity and relation, how this shift has materialized in my own curatorial practice over the last 3 years. And then the bulk of the conversation will be going through the readings of two authors, Lisa Lowe and Édouard Glissant. And I've removed Frantz Fanon and Ronaldo Walcott because it, I think, complicated the project more than it needs to be right now. But I am thinking about them in relation to this work, specifically Walcott's reading of Glissant and Fanon together. So in the past 3 years of my practice, I have focused primarily on the subject of archives in relation to decolonial art and historical practices. And through this approach, the archive has figured as a metaphor and a verb to decenter what I consider to be systematically destructive ways of doing history. And this is an installation view of not the camera, but the filing cabinet, performative archives and contemporary art, which happened in Gallery 103. And I think Jennifer Gibson is also on the line, who is the director of the space. And so 3 years ago, I was really interested in thinking about identity and how different artists and practitioners sort of worked with embodied archives that involved race, sexuality, and gender to really disrupt dominant ideas around history and place. And so while I'm still very much invested in revisiting history through the curation of such practices, I think at this stage, I'm more focused on shifting that a little bit and shifting my focus as well from art as a method of moving through the past to one in which art is a way to move out into the world. So involving speculation alongside archival rummaging as well, which this exhibition did beautifully. The artist did more so than I did, but I want to bring that speculation into my curatorial practice as well. So following my past exhibitions, where my underlying motive was the justification of taking up space through the appropriation of the archival method, I want to shift focus and take up other affects such as pleasure, joy, and confusion as well, which is an affect that I've encountered a lot through this exhibition specifically. Like, how do I make one element speak to another, or how do I explain a particular decision? So I am performing this low pivot right now to locate maybe less immobilizing affects that demonstrate other ways in which we have and can be entangled in this world outside shared traumas and dislocations. And I think to do that work means moving from identity to relationality. And I'm not going to touch on identity as a big project or like identity politics. We can talk about that in the discussion. But especially with what happened in the 20th century. And I'm really picking up identity from the aftermath of 9/11, so how identity-based art projects and curation sort of emerged. And then this is a point that I wanted to bring Ronaldo Walcott as well, where he affirmed the role of identity in cultural practices when writing in the post 9/11 surveillance state, identity has reemerged as a function of the state to mark, contain, surveil, and incarnate in a fashion that requires a serious re-engagement with identity claims. And because my scholarly work, it deals with Islamic art and exhibition histories, like I'm still sort of connected to identity, and I understand how it's still a very useful tool to contest what is happening in Canada, America, and like the rest of the world. But yeah, for me, identity has been a useful place to curate from, as well as a useful rubric to challenge more commonly held assumptions about difference in the 21st century. But really, since encountering Glissant, I've also found some vocabulary to move out of this bubble, and however productive that was, into a more unknown field that is unstable and poses more questions, I think, than it answers. So it's an attempt to move away from a stable body of knowledge to one that is on looser footing. So for instance, how do we take up Glissant, like, you know, in Toronto or Vancouver, where his work has been taken up, but you know, to varying degrees, and how do we negotiate his ideas around roots and rhizomes specifically when considering both land-based politics and also migrations. And I think when rereading Glissant for this exhibition, I think it's still the section that I stumble on, because yeah, it's very difficult to negotiate how to make those ideas fit in this specific location, because they can in other places, Europe, for instance. But yeah, again, we can talk about that later. So yeah, there's still a lot of difficult and complex things about relation, especially through Glissant's work. But I do believe that a lot of institutions and curators in Canada and abroad are taking up this work. And in last week's reading session, we looked at, or Ayman brought up Acts of Art and Solidarity, which is a group exhibition that OKA is doing in Norway to look at how solidarity movements have shaped contemporary art across the world. And then recently, we also had Relations, an exhibition in Montreal about painting and just the import of Glissant in that field. And for this project, I'm also inviting Space Between Us, and specifically the Glam Collective, who have been working cross-culturally for the last few years to produce exhibitions and do research across borders and boundaries. So this work is moving, but yeah, I think I'm at that place where I'm thinking about how do I sort of take what's already happened, the ideas and the projects that have happened, and how do I sort of find my own language and my own working in that. And before moving on to Glissant, and I was going to talk about this exhibition as well, which happened in Edmonton, and I think it was one of the first sort of projects that I did where identity wasn't really the central focus, but it was aesthetics rather, and how, you know, just like birds, sort of like the motif of birds flew in and out of artworks. And only in looking back at this exhibition am I really seeing you know, this shift sort of occur in my practice. So yeah, and I think we have some folks from Edmonton as well. But Yeah, and also the walls match my own because, yeah, this is my favorite color. And yeah, so yeah, to get into the next stage of the lecture, I want to look at Lisa Lowe's text and also Glissant, and then maybe spend some time rethinking research and how to do curatorial research that is informed by Lisa Lowe and Glissant in particular. So yeah. Am I still live? Yes. So I'm bringing up Lisa Lowe because I encountered her work, I think, this past year when working on my PhD, and also because different artists in this project are also looking at archives or developing their own. And I think there's a really nice intersection that can develop between Lisa Lowe's archival work and the more anticipatory relations that Glissant sort of suggests. So I do want to bring her work up, and specifically her essay, The Intimacies of Four Continents, which put her in dialogue with other post-colonial scholars, including Paul Gilroy and also Ronaldo Walcott. So in her work, she's committed to critiquing culture within the colonial project because, according to her, it was supported through slavery, capitalism, and empire. And yet her work goes beyond the more isolated and discrete studies presented in the field as she concentrates on shared oppressions and alliances of resistance between Black, Indigenous, and Asian people as they played out in the history of colonization. And when doing this archival theorizing, she agrees with Anne-Laura Stoller when arguing that the colonial archive is an assemblage of histories that both observed and suppressed connections between different communities, and to continue controlling the dominant narrative of modernity and stoking the fire of multicultural tensions in the colonial metropolis. Such historical documents have been scattered and made incomprehensible to favor local and identity-based histories. So despite this dispersal, she argues that it is necessary to witness historical links between settler colonialism in North America and the West Indies alongside the African slave trade. And similarly, the late modernist impetus behind the abolition of slavery should be put into dialogue with the consequent importation of Chinese and South Asian indentured labor. The British and later the American expulsion of primitive slavery for the more civilized free labor of the brown races was a liberal move in which the abolition proved an expedient solution. And these transformations of capitalistic oppression secured white supremacy in North America and also in Europe. And she looks at these archives and she thinks through the gaps within these archives to find locations for possibilities as well. So her imperative behind this archival rummaging is not to fill the gaps in history or mitigate their exclusionary consequences, but rather it is to point out the potential of animating such gaps. And she recommends there's an ethics and politics in struggling to comprehend the particular absence of the intimacies of four continents to engage slavery, genocide, indenture, and liberalism as a conjunction, as an actively acknowledged loss within the present. And charged with the piecing together of historical links without the urge of filling the gaps, it becomes crucial to join the past and present together to refute this logic of colonization in the present. And so following Lisa Lowe, I feel there is a responsibility to mine historical archives and animating their silences to develop more imaginative leaps between different communities that can prepare us for the past and also the future. And so with this thinking in the background, I also want to turn to Glissant, who explores the poetics and politics and urgencies of contact in the here and now. And I think when talking about research, I'll also bring this up again about animating the gaps, even the ones in the present, and rethinking accidents such as like the connection between Canada and Norway, and how it can really sort of animate research and really push its boundaries for us to imagine connections and relations differently. So with Lisa sort of contextualizing what has already happened specifically in this region, I do want to turn to Glissant, who, like I said, there are parts of this text which are inaccessible to me right now and maybe always will be. And yeah, that pose a lot of questions, but he still remains quite important for this project and in anchoring as well. And so in Poetics of Relation, Glissant's anticipatory politics really hang on imagination, relation, and politics. And this is elaborated more in the introduction to the 1997 publication, which I think Or Gallery still has copies of. And in the introduction, we really, his poetics are sort of translated by Betsy Wong. And then his imagination is revealed to be something that transforms thinking, relation as the process of this transformation, and finally poetics as the ultimate transformative vehicle of history. And Glissant focuses on the moment of collisional encounter throughout this text as the production of relation. And this collisional moment and its chaotic aftermath are held together by what Glissant calls chaos monde, a world of multiplicity that is gathered through diversity versus an ordered unity. Further, this mode of being in the world is paired with the mode of echoes monde, that which carries the echoes of histories and allows us to define and maintain cultural opacities. And put in other words, echoes monde are the peoples and cultures that are thrust into the global relationality of chaos monde. And so here the participants, artists, myself, and the public function as the echoes, and the exhibition becomes this microscopic experimentation into thinking about what this world of chaos can really look like, and if relation can emerge as well. And another element that I want to pull out from Glissant that informs my thinking is when he works through the idea of pseudo solidarities that generate the possibilities of relation, rather than those who are ready to come into relation, that share histories of subjugation and the experience of being in the abyss as the element of exchange. And he also writes that people who have been to the abyss do not brag of being chosen. So I'm excited to, I think, pull this idea apart as well. What makes people, cultures, and including artists and practitioners, what makes their entrance sort of possible. And of course, this exhibition, I curated. So I brought these people into conversation together. But, how do we sort of bring or merge our experiences together that, don't become temporary or pseudo-solidarities, as Glissant argues. And even if they do, I think, I think there's also a lot to learn about these exhibitionary experiments as well. And finally, another element that, I do want to draw attention to alongside solidarities is this metaphor and this location of the archipelago that Glissant writes from. And just find my notes. Yeah, so in his work, Glissant really focuses on the Caribbean as a symbolic place for relation to grow. And he writes that it may be held up as one of the places in the world where relation presents itself most visibly, one of the most explosive regions where it seems to be gathering strength. This has always been a place of encounter and at the same time a passageway toward the American continent. The Caribbean is a sea that explodes the scattered lands into an arc, a sea that diffracts, without necessarily inferring any advantage whatsoever to their situation. The reality of archipelagos in the Caribbean or the Pacific, it provides a natural illustration of the thought of relation. And the ways in which the Caribbean becomes a center for Glissant's thinking, I feel that in a way we also, as artists, but also, parts of cultures and communities, we also exist in archipelagos, individual or collective islands that have had historical networks of connection, which have been eroded by colonial forces and archives as well over time. So really, how can we mobilize Glissant's archipelagic thinking to remember our isolations first and then employ them as a potential to making our own connections and then the world. So while the Caribbean is a place that Glissant writes from, how do we sort of bring our own locations of reading and reception into that conversation? And so also, how can we do this work through processes of collaboration and learning that don't have to compromise our specific inheritance or locations? And for this reason, I really centered on gives on and with from the text, which is Glissant's way of replacing comprehension with donner avec, from the French word. Sorry, I've lost my notes. And I can read the passage in the discussion, but broadly speaking, gives on and with replaces comprehension because it's a more generous way of giving and receiving knowledge that is different from the more demanding ways of comprehension that come from colonial and neo-colonial forms of knowledge. And so here, reciprocity is really key. Reciprocity is really key, and I want to have that as the heart of this exhibition. Like, how do we, before we even start thinking about relation, how do we change the language of speaking about our experiences and our practices? And preparing ourselves to receive the world as well. And I think I do want to read the passage actually because, Betsy Wang uses this metaphor of a tree to explain this shift in Glissant's language. So another word complex, the verbal phrase donner avec, relays the concept of understanding into the world of relation, translating, contesting, then reconstituting its elements in a new order. The French word for understanding, comprehendre, like its English cognate, is formed on the basis of the Latin word to seize, which is formed from the roots con, with, and prendre, to take. Glissant contrasts this form of understanding, appropriative, almost rapacious, with the understanding upon which relation must be based. Donner avec, donner, to give, is meant as a generosity of perception. In French, donner can mean to look out toward. There's also the possible sense of yielding, as a tree might give in a storm in order to remain standing. Avec both reflects back on the calm of comprendre and defines the underlying principle of relation. Gives on and with is unwieldy, but unfamiliar tools are always awkward. And so I wanted to, I think, run with this awkwardness and see, I guess, if we could shift understandings of knowledge through trying to do this more reciprocal work, which, in the reading sessions, it happens with, artists sharing their own knowledge, but also, listening to the others in the following sessions. So creating that space for exchange to happen over multiple different events as well. And moving on from Glissant, and we can return to him after, I do want to get into my final sort of topic of the lecture where, I want to think about expanding research as a process to meet the aims of this more relational work. How do we make research into archives or history sort of fit or be able to mediate new ways of learning? And so for this, I've collected some sort of ideas that I feel are resonating with this exhibition in particular. And here I'm presenting just an image from Irit Rogov's talk, Becoming Research, where I'm receiving a lot of these ideas. And there's a dash between research and curation to suggest that there's a link still being formed between the two, but it's processual and it's taking shape, I think, over the course of this exhibition. So there's still kind of gap between the kind of research I want to start doing and the curatorial practice that might allow that to happen. So I'll be talking about research in a broader sense, and then moving closer towards connecting these dots near the close of this exhibition. So starting with Irit Rogov and some of her ideas about becoming research, she suggests that research is an event in itself, that it's not interested in moving towards a decision, and that rather than validating particular hypotheses, the work of becoming research is to be an agent in research that moves, acts, and refuses to stay stable. And because it is so fluid in form and movement, this way of research cannot be pinned down or used by dominant society to meet its own ends. And we've explored this so far in the reading sessions with words like multiculturalism, diversity, solidarity, which all have different origins and even radical uses at different times. But in the end, they have all been captured by society as tools to identify and organize people as well. So with that, research for me has to become an activity that can allow us to test different ways of thinking and being in uncertain times and contexts, with possibilities to evade and become opaque when necessary. So what kind of research do we do when we try to use different words for comprehension, or use different words for encounter or entanglement or networking? How does that happen, and how do we research in ways that don't have to validate a situation or validate curatorial decisions, for instance? So yeah, I'm inviting that sort of thinking in this project. And finally, another element that Rogoff brings up, and I want to really unpack here, is her distinction between inherited knowledge and conditions, which again brings up concepts of echoes and encounters that Glissant shares in his work. And Rogoff argues that today we should move away from stable bodies of knowledges, which include inherited knowledge, to focus instead on conditions that emerge. And, reflecting on this exhibition, I think, it really sits somewhere in between, because I want to see how we can tackle conditions of the global, the present, and the future without letting go of knowledge, ways of thinking and being that we have inherited from our ancestors, both distant and close. And so, with this exhibition and my research is a way of merging both inherited knowledge and making sense of the encounters that are bound to happen. And I think Glissant also asked this of us when writing about the chaotic drive to wander without getting lost. How do we merge our experiences and pleasure in listening to our own language, or music and sounds in our own language, while still trying to reach out and bend to meet other people? So how do we do that work? So so in that sense, I think this methodology that Yurit Rogoff proposes, while it has gaps, I think I'm really excited to continue pursuing it, because it does support the sort of slow and elliptical work I want to do for this exhibition, and hopefully the future as well. And yeah, I think that, and then another, final question about research is also, I think, touches the exhibition more specifically, is like, why this connection between Canada and Norway? And for this, I'll return to Rogoff when she lifts up this question: where am I if I'm not coming from a series of inherited knowledge? And, in my imagination, it also reads as, what kind of research can we do if the origins for it are not there, or presently inaccessible, or incomprehensible to you? And this lecture, she brings up Theaster Gates and his own take on historical research. And specifically, he, in his own lecture, he wonders, what kind of work can you do in African American and other racialized communities and what kind of work can you do if you're part of them or working with them, as well as American institutions who have actively erased their histories and participation. And, she outlines his response that, even when there is erased memory, there are rhythms from which we can start from, and that a beginning can occur even in like the faintest of pulsations and embodied affects, which, I'm considering confusion to be one, or desire to be another. So how do we sort of think through Canada and Norway without having to identify maybe like the clearest markers, which are, of course, that, both are active in settler colonialism and also like white supremacy, but also what do the artists living in those two nations sort of share, or what kind of languages and strategies can they share across, across the ocean, that can be productive and interesting to pursue, and maybe not produce the results that are expected, but bring up other questions in return. And so I think that's my approach to research right now. And so, running with Glissant, Lisa Lowe, Irit Rogoff, and then Theaster Gates, my particular research for this curatorial project leaves behind a desire to make historical connections, or really astute observations, or organization, but rather I'm trying to perform a more imaginative linkage between Canada and Norway as locations that can, produce different archives and different ways of challenging different histories, including colonization. Like, how do we, do that work separately, and how do we come together to talk about strategies? And so because this work is, still very based and rooted in imagination and creation, it is very slow, and it will unfold throughout, the next few weeks, but also after. And I think we'll be without concrete answers, which, again, brings up notes about research and like becoming research as an event rather than trying to find an end point. So in turn, while having this like more ambiguous and abstract cloud of relation and, research -- curation hanging over the exhibition, I'm really excited for the reading sessions to act as, like specific echoes that, that can be heard together, that still bring up important practices and, strategies that can give us a clearer sense of relation between Canada and Norway, and I think more broadly as well as we move forward. So I'm hoping that some material roots might come out of this project, but I'm also really excited to continue reading Glissant and maybe sitting with the more uncomfortable passages. I think that's about it. I have more notes, but I think I would just like to talk now with everybody. Oh yeah, and these are the artists, and we can talk about them more specifically after like I presented some of the texts that I'm encountering myself through this project.
Thanks, Noor. I wondered if you wanted to, yeah, I can show some images of what's in the gallery so far and how it's been evolving. But if you wanted to speak a little bit about the works that are in the exhibition and how maybe you arrived at those choices with the artists, and if you're seeing sort of like relationships emerging between the works themselves as well as this collaborative process.
Yeah, so, you know, so far we've only had Zinnia Naqvi, who presented during the first week. And, you know, we included one of prints from an older work, Yours to Discover, and that's in the gallery, but she's also developing a script for an upcoming project that will go in the space. And then next we had Ayman Al-Zarak, who is based in Norway, but is exploring, you know, the Palestinian archive because that's where he's from. And he also like accidentally came across a lot of content while being based in Norway. And he also included a script. So like materially, there's like already connections between the artists. But in like my conversations with everybody so far, I think I'm also, as a curator, I'm also encouraging everybody just to like stick to their practice and sort of let chance and possibility sort of remain for the actual virtual conversation or the gallery itself. And then we have two more artists, and I don't want to talk about their work because, you know, the part of this exhibition is, you know, focusing on works in progress and like dream projects that artists will be sort of researching on their own. So yeah, Luanda Carnero Yacuel and Mariana Munoz Gomez will go in the next few weeks. And then we'll also hear from the Glam Collective. Yeah.
You guys can see my screen, right? You can see these images? Yeah, okay, cool. So this is Ayman's collection of a video, a script, and then some additional images. A reading group from last week, projected on the wall there. And Mariana's washi transfer that's in the front window of the gallery that you can see from the street. Poetics of Relation and Purple Gallery to go for the first week before we had anything in there. Right now we have a white gallery for Ayman's work, and the readings kind of collecting across the back wall there. And then this was Zinnia's work as a vinyl transfer in the gallery space, and it was a blue day, a blue week.
And then next we'll have peach, pink, and turquoise, right? Or no, Zinnia's was turquoise. Luanda's is blue. She emailed me back before Zinnia did, so. And it's also really lovely that our gallery has, you know, this technology that we can let everybody sort of change and like make their space as we go as well.
Yeah, I wanted to, sorry, I just, as you were talking about the color, like, you know, of course, in exhibitions, there's the artist's work placed in the space and all of those juxtapositions. But I really, yeah, with the lighting, just as you brought it up, I was thinking about how it's a real like sort of correspondence with the space, whether, you know, that's the gallery or like the place or, yeah, just a sense of that just through the various lighting that artists have picked to accompany the week that their work goes up. But just also in terms of the sort of the cumulative effect of, you know, the artist doing their talk or reading group and then having their work appear in the gallery, just through some kind of typical gallery tech management that I've been doing this week, like having to think about, you know, these multiple voices, because as you can see, there's a little speaker by Amen's work, and then there's the projection, and then there's another sound piece coming up, and this idea, you know, of not just polyphony, which really connects well to Glissant and relation, but also cacophony, and if there's something that you were going for there, or how that might relate to, like what maybe how that might be productive, like having all these, you know, rather than like the headphones, I'm listening to this and then I'm going over and I'm listening to this, but having kind of the leakage of sound. And in that plinth, your voice is, there's a speaker in there and your voice is reading Poetics of Relation. So that's always, again, kind of in the gallery as well. Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I wanted to actually bring this up in the lecture as well, but like my first encounter with Glissant in Oslo in 2019, like it was like a bizarre discussion we had after the lecture. Like everybody, like I think they wanted to speak louder than the next person. Like it was all about, like, I think egos in that room, but it was still very interesting, like how so many people can exist in a room, in a conversation, and yet I still get to walk away like with my own ideas and like reading of that event. So I think the gallery space itself allows like multiple voices to just, be in their own space and like take this project as they would. Because, it does happen at different time as well. So I like the distance and like I think the distance and like difference and like the incommensurable elements between voices and the content of their texts as well. And yeah, about the assemblage, I think this is like the first project I've been allowed to sort of really do this, like really think about process and actually do it in a physical space. So that's been exciting. And I think it, animates some of the ideas that Glissant has about, chaos building rather than being something that's already done in the past, or relation is always sort of forming. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to like, do that work as a curator and like do that in like an exhibition space. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention it. So we are open to anyone that has a comment or a question. Feel free to.
You can post it in the chat too if you would rather do it that way. I can read it out. I think we'll have to do like a video recording of the exhibition when everything is on and playing, and the experience of like moving around the gallery and those different voices kind of rising and falling, and what greets you when you come into the space. And it's a very like embodied experience as you move through the gallery. You're really like aware of your proximity to the work.
Yeah. And I wish I could be there in person as well to like experience it. But yeah, I'm really like, happy about like the virtual component right now, because it's still like a way of like dialoguing and trying to find community at this time. So yeah, I think like the weekly sessions have been really grounding for me.
Yeah, I mean, in relation to that, you mentioned in your talk, like sort of this elliptical work, slow work. And, I'd mentioned in some of the previous talks, like how much I loved that, that circulation between the artists and then the work in the space and then the audience, and that it, if someone's able, it's work that calls someone back to the space repeatedly and then calls them into a space with the artist. And then the artists are constantly meeting each other online through these sessions. And yeah, I just wanted to hear more about that, not just in relation to this exhibition, but maybe some of the others that you also mentioned in your talk, and strategies for avoiding this, this, I think your word was pseudo solidarities. Yeah, I mean, the exhibition making is so, there's such a range, and often there is that lack of like relationship between the artist or the space, that I feel acutely as a curator. So I'd just love to hear more about that.
Yeah, with like the elliptical sense, it's like with the space, but also like with like vocabulary, like, you know, we're talking about solidarity or diversity or multiculturalism through these two different like locations, but also multiple like different places within that. So it's interesting that we like continue to sort of like not even circle back, but just like wing back to these, you know, bigger topics, but it doesn't exhaust the subject or like the conversation at all. It just sort of, each return sort of adds more to it. And I think that's really exciting about these conversations we're having, and, you know, the work that I want to do in the future, that, you know, even if it is about archives or relation, it's just like, you know, it sort of brings new perspectives in each time, and like different voices in as well. Yeah, because it's been so different with each artist and like the artists that will come as well. So yeah, like rather than like circular, which is like a fun word to use and like fun way to move your body, but theoretically I feel better about that. Yeah, I think my lecture was really heavy. I sort of wanted to like get out like bigger bites that I've been taking, and then you know, digest the project as a whole for the essay. But if you have any questions, or maybe some of the ways in which you're negotiating identity or relation in your practice, I think I really love to hear that. Or if you have texts that you're reading right now.
Hi, Noor. I just want to thank you for your lecture, first of all. I really, I don't know if I can say I enjoyed it so much as I feel like I got a tidal wave of beautiful, beautiful thinking that I'm really digesting. So like, thank you for that. And I'm sure we'll talk more about some of it. Not seeing the exhibition physically, I'm also a little heartbroken, but yeah, I just want to give you appreciation that this cumulative structure that you've built, seeing the light today. I mean, I think that's just, you know, really affectively animating gaps. Like you were, I was really appreciating how you were talking about animating gaps with the archive, but also in relation, and how you're using light to do that between, you know, it's kind of like animating a paradigm shift between each artist, kind of contending with similar things. And so I'm just appreciating the subtlety of that from over here, and thinking about how this will be accumulating, like these the ephemera, and like how that is the work of these sort of interventions, right, with archives, or if you or if you're becoming the research or becoming the archive. That, yeah, I just think you've given us some beautiful offerings today, and I'm curious, like how, yeah, like how you imagine this model of accumulation and relation, like continuing like after this project, or yeah, how you see those threads being picked up maybe.
Yeah, I
Thank
think, thank you. No, that was, yeah, a lovely read on like the like exhibition at OR, and thank you so much for the comments. Yeah, it was very heavy, like I took out a lot. But hopefully we can have like a private conversation as well about this. But I think about like process and like like I just want to mention, like it's honestly such a rare thing to be given space and not be there in person to actually make those changes every day. So I really appreciate Denise and Lori to actually like do that physical work. But yeah, like spatially, like I think this feels rare for me right now, like just with like what institutional access I have. But in another way, yeah, I think it will continue to inform my practice because I'll continue to think about different ways of entering, the question, like how do we live better? How do we talk to each other? Like how do we not have to like lose our locations or lose our histories to be able to like enter into relation. And I think there's so many different ways of doing that. And like the main focus here is on like text and like research, like what kind of texts are moving you and how do you learn from another person's way of relating and then put that into practice. So there's that sort of layer. But in the future, yeah, I don't know what shape it'll take, but I'm really, really excited, yeah, about this like, confusion as like a way of filling the gap, as a possible way of filling the gap and not having answers and instead just sort of receiving what comes out of that. And yeah, and like the generosity of, origami, putting up everything is one of the things that's coming out of it. So yeah, I'm sorry I can't answer for the next little while, but thank you.
I wondered if any of the artists that are with us from the show might have comments or questions. I know Zinnia's here. It's hard for me to see.
Yeah, hey everybody. I can just comment and say, yeah, ditto what Noor is saying. It's very generous to thank you all, like Denise and Lori and Noor, also for putting this exhibition together, because it's very sort of rare to have this space to be thinking through these ideas with people, sort of like live in the moment of making. And then sort of like reacting to what the other artists are also putting forward. So I can just say that like it's been, and it's especially generous in the time that we are trying to work in. It can be like dually just like help with, I think, motivation and yeah, I guess enhancing this sort of idea of community, not performative, but yeah, actual sort of community that we're trying to enrich over many platforms. So that's my main comment, is just thank you. It's a great way to be working and making and sharing ideas.
Bhangu is here as well.
Hi. My connection it's not so good, so maybe I can disappear. Sorry for that. Thank you so much for your presentation, Noor, and thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this exhibition. I'm very excited. It was really wonderful to see as well the development of the archive inside of this space, and the colors gave me a kind of sense that we are somewhere, even that is this digital and a kind of imaginary space, but just to see the physicality gave another embodiment of the exhibition. So it was really nice to see. And I really appreciate the approach of archive and accumulation in your curatorial practice. And I think really resonates in how I work, because I see myself, my body, and all my ancestrality and as an archive. So I'm really trying to unfolding and updating the living archives that are dynamicing and operating in a trans-temporality perspective inside of my body now, in this contemporary perspective and artistic perspective. So it's a nice opportunity to exchange and go even further with the perspective of being transnational and transcultural, in the sense that we can also see the entanglements that we belong to and how much these metrics are operating together in so many layers between oceans and lands and time. So yes, just a little something from me, and thank you so much to be with all of you tonight.
Yeah, it actually, your comment brought up this text that Denise passed on to me recently. The introductory chapter from Island of the Sea of, do you want to jump in with the time?
The Kalunga, you mean?
Oh no, Denise just sent me.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Which yeah, I wanted to like share, because like what you brought up. Let me see if I can bring it up. Denise. We are the ocean.
I forgot, I can also speak. Sorry. We are the ocean, Epele Hau Alpha. So I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing the name right. It's spelled like this. Ugh. Yeah.
And in that article, he was talking about, you know, how do we like sort of, you know, try to move away from like these these narratives of smallness that like colonial powers have imposed on like these islands, and really start to like enlarge. And it was really interesting when he was talking about you know, not having like, we're not required to replicate traditional worldviews of ways of relating to each other, but we're already sort of practicing that, and we're already like starting networks and like new links between people that could that also look like, you know, like a cousin working in a different city and coming back to visit. And it's really exciting that these like, yeah, these new kinships are emerging. So yeah, that's what your comment brought to mind. That yeah, this work is already happening, and there's so many links between what was and I'm sorry, I just read the article yesterday, so please read to get the full version. But yeah, does anybody have any other insights about relation? Because I'm also just like very early on into this research. So if you've like, you know, produced projects or exhibitions or writing around this, I think I would really love to learn from that as well.
Okay, well, I think if there are no more final comments or questions, I think I'll just thank Noor for that detailed kind of providing of some depth and background to the way that you're thinking at the moment. And thank everybody for attending, and hopefully we see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noor.
Thank you, Noor.
Thank you so much, Noor. It was lovely.
Thank you.
Bye bye.